Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Beth and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Beth and Stan.
Welcome back to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Beth. And today we are excited because this is our 100th episode of the podcast. So thank you for everybody who tuned in and has joined us. We hope you have enjoyed these podcasts all along the way. Today's format is actually a little bit different. So Stan and I are going to be going back through talking about some of the guests that we've had and some of the wisdom that we have learned over the past 99 episodes leading up to this episode today. So, my question for Stan, but I'll answer first, is after 99 episodes and having met all of these incredible people, what are your thoughts and what are your takeaways? And here's mine. I think my greatest takeaway after doing 99 episodes is the realization that you and I, Stan, are not alone in our passion in this idea of legacy and the power that legacy has to really transform an individual's life or a family or community. And so one of my takeaways from this is that what I see over and over interviewing all these people is that the thing we have in common is that these are all people out there who see a need and are using their skills and their knowledge in whatever space they're in to try to make the world better. I thought through as I was listening back to all these episodes, we've never had a single guest that has gotten on and said, I just want to make money. I just want to be rich and retire. I just want people to leave me alone. We all have to make money. But the passion that inspires all of these leaders is their passion about making a difference. And obviously, if they can run a successful company and do that, that's even better. And so I think my takeaway is just how really incredible it is that no matter whether we're talking to a doctor or a financial advisor or an estate planning attorney or a pastor or whoever it is that we're talking to on these episodes, whatever space that person is in, they're just trying to use their gifts and their talents and their skills to help other people and make the world a better place. And that kind of gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling when you realize how many cool people are out there. For our listeners, there's not really a single episode we've ever had where Stan and I don't finish the episode and then text or call each other and say, man, that was such a cool person. I'd love to have dinner with them. I would love for them to come visit us in Arkansas. I would love to get to know them better. So just getting to know these people in different spaces and different industries and different places in the world, really out there using their circle of influence to make the world better. That has been my biggest eye-opener and my most positive takeaway.
Beth, that is so true. We've had so many people people we didn't know. When we interviewed them initially, we didn't know them. By the time we were done with the podcast, they're talking to us after. They're inviting us to come see them and spend time together. You know, I've been invited to spend a long weekend in Florida at one of our guests' beach house, and so I'm thinking, this is really cool. But the point that you're making, though, I think is so important. And it's something that I think a lot of people really miss, and that is that the most successful people, the people who are most successful in their professional lives, make their financial success the byproduct of what they do. It's not like these people get up every morning and they're looking at an Excel spreadsheet and they're putting dollars on every transaction, right? It's like what they do is they get up and with a passion, with a commitment, and make a difference in the lives of their clients with the confidence that if they do that authentically, the financial success will come as a byproduct, but it's the byproduct. It's not the focus. And and I would say that if there was one single common denominator that you and I could really distill from all of the podcast guests that we've had, is that they really evoke that sense. When you talk to them, there is such a passion for making a difference, making an impact in the lives of their clients, and making a difference in the larger world, making an impact in their communities. And 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 the people that we've interviewed, have been generally pretty successful financially, but but that's not what they worry about. What they worry about is how can I make the lives of my clients better. And I think that's a takeaway that all of us, you and I, need to be reminded of, and I think our listeners need to be reminded of, because there is this idea that to be successful, it's really a dog eat dog world out there, and you've got to be the dog that eats the other dog, right? But it turns out it's not really wired that way. It actually is quite the opposite.
No, I agree. I do think probably because of books and movies, there's kind of this idea out there that the business world is cutthroat. And so one thing I always loved about your philosophy and the way that we do things with our law firm and with the Legacy Leaders Network and everybody we really work with is this idea that they're not competitors. We are all able to really work together and help each other. And so I love that idea, and I very much pick up that sense. A lot of the people that we interview sometimes are other people doing what we do. They're estate planning attorneys, and so there would be this idea of, oh, we need to be doing that. Oh, we should be doing that better. And instead, it's kind of this idea of, oh, we can learn from that. That's great. It's great wisdom. And so this idea that there are no competitors out in the world, there's just collaborators. I love that. And my hope through this podcast is that we've really helped people, whether they're whatever their industry is, that they can really listen to some of these interviews we've done and understand that sense of there are others out there that are legacy minded people that are interested in helping others and having a positive influence on the world. So yes, you and I are on the same page with that. Okay, so we're going to jump in. These are in no certain order, but these are just a few of the very many, and we could do a 4-hour episode on this because we've had so many great podcasts. But these are a few of the really cool topics and ideas, and then sometimes direct quotes that some of our podcast interviewees have left us with. So, in our interview with Tom Hegna, we talked about, and I know you'll have a lot to say about this, the Japanese concept of Ikigai. Did I say that correctly, Stan? Okay, Ikigai. So, Ikigai is the Japanese word for your reason or your purpose for life. And there are four circles of influence here. It's what you love, which is your passion so what you love, your passion, what the world needs, which is your mission, what you're good at, which is your vocation, and what you get paid for, which is your profession. And so Tom's advice for our listeners was to figure those four things out and then get out there and do them. So what are Stan Miller's thoughts on the concept of Ikigai?
But one thing we know for sure, and I can say this from having spent really quality time with, gosh, I don't know, 10,000 estate planning clients. One of the great things about being an estate planning attorney is it really does open the door. When I sit down with a new client, it's not a transaction, right? When I sit down with a new client, I get to hear the story of their life, and I get to hear what it is that matters to them. And one of the things that I have really come to learn, and this is, I wish I'd started keeping records on this, 30 years ago. But one of the things I've really come to learn is that when people have a sense of purpose in their life, purpose that is something beyond themselves, they are, without any exception, they're happy. And that's true regardless of their circumstances. They may have serious health issues. Uh, there may have been tragedies in their life, but even with that, they're happy. People that don't have that Ikigai, people that don't have that purpose, who are generally self-focused. It's all about them, and how do I, you know, how do I get more for me? Almost without exception, are not happy. And so, when you see this over and over and over again, repeatedly, and with people, from different cultural backgrounds, different ages, different religious traditions, you start to think, the universe is wired a certain way, right? There's actually like a DNA code built into human beings that give us the the a fail-safe recipe for how to be happy and how to be successful. And getting, and Hegna got that exactly right. You have to get those things lined up. You have to get all in a perfect world. We would have those four components aligned so that we have a purpose and clarity around that, but we're also doing things that we're also good at.
Right. And I love the four concepts of Ikigai, and I do think it's very interesting, and I've not done a ton of research into it, but I do think it's very interesting that that concept kind of separates and differentiates the thing you're good at, your vocation, and the thing that you get paid for, your profession, and divides those out. So just a very interesting concept, and something I hope our listeners will take some time and put some thought into. Our
Let
next
me
bit of wisdom.
let
Oh,
me
go
let
ahead.
me
Yeah.
move on. But before you move on to the next thing, I want to mention there's a recent series on Netflix called Blue Zones, and it's really this guy who spent the last 20 years studying people that have lived to be really old, and it turns out that there are places in the world where people tend to live to be really old a lot, and so he's done this series, and it's a great series, but ikigai is a key concept, particularly whenever he went to Okinawa and found those two villages up on the north side of Okinawa where people, they don't even celebrate birthdays there till you're 100. It's like up to then, it's not a big deal, right? So it's only after you're 100 they celebrate your birthday. So it turns out that there's a real high correlation between having a real sense of authentic purpose in your life and living a really long time. And it turns out also that not only are these people living to be really old, they're healthy while they're living to be old, and they're not catching dementia either. So a lot to be learned there. This ikigai concept.
Yes. So for those of you interested in looking more into Ikigai, I'm going to actually spell that for you so you can Google it. It's Ikigai. So check out Ikigai and look more into that. In our episode with Dr. Mary Beth Kuzmezki, her wisdom is that to be successful, you've got to be adaptable. To make an impact on the world, you constantly have to be ready for the next challenge and be prepared to adapt. I know that that is certainly true in my life. What are your thoughts on that, Stan?
Well, when you think about how much change happens to us, if you don't see it, today from yesterday, right? There's not that much change that typically happens in 24 hours in the world. But if you think back about the the amount of change that's happened just in the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years. We had a pandemic. I don't know if you remember that, but the whole COVID thing happened, right?
Vaguely,
And
yeah, vaguely, I remember
it,
COVID, sure.
so when I look at my life, when I look at all of our team members, all of our lives, the way we live our work life is radically different. We've had to learn how do we be effective? How do we serve clients effectively? How do we meet client needs without having to actually sit down across the table from them? Because, in the middle of a pandemic, we can't do that. So we've had to learn to adapt to that. And it turns out that we've learned that we can do a lot of things without having to get in our car and drive 3 hours to see somebody. Or our clients have learned that they can do a lot of work with us without having to get in their car and drive 3 hours to see us and then
Right.
drive 3 hours back, right? So sometimes the adversity that drops in pushes us, nudges us to adapt in ways that really move the needle for us. But if you think back over the last 10 years, how different is our life? How different are the technologies that we use? It wasn't that long ago that we didn't have an iPhone or Android that we carried around. And now I'm trying to imagine what my life would be like without that, right? It's like I could I could access all the news of the world. I could be informed. I can engage in financial transactions. You know, I could do just amazing things all while I'm lying in bed at 6 o'clock in the morning if I want to, from my iPhone. And Katie, because you get emails and texts from
I
me,
do.
you know,
I do.
yeah.
Yes. Yes,
So that
the world has changed so significantly. And part of the deal with being adaptable is you're going to have to be there are going to be things in your life like COVID that force you to change one way or the other. And so adopting that positive mindset of figuring out a solution and finding a way to get it done, to be successful really in any field, in any industry, or even within your own family, you've got to have that positive mindset and that idea that you're a person who can adapt to things because life is going to make you adapt to those changes. We have another quote about that I'm actually bringing to the table. We'll circle around about that here in a few minutes. So, in our interview with Louis Scott, he said that the key to life is to be able to create predictable revenue so that you can then focus on the other aspects of your life. And so I loved that quote from him. It really kind of also goes with that concept of Ikigai, in that finances that's not the focus. Your purpose in life is your focus. And so Luis's wisdom, his idea is that being able to have the power to create predictable revenue really opens up the possibilities of your life, because once we've checked that box, then you can focus on the other things that truly matter to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So if you don't have predictable revenue, you spend every day worrying about how you're going to make a living tomorrow, right? And so, for a long time, I've believed that that predictability of revenue is a key component to create a successful business. And what I've also found is that not only is predictable revenue a good thing for an entrepreneur, that is to have a business that does have predictable revenue, but what I've also observed is that that kind of business model that produces that predictable revenue is actually really good for the clients or customers of the business, because they now have the confidence that they have a predictable, sustainable relationship with the person or the business is providing that service, right? If you don't have that if you don't have that kind of consistency, then you have to really worry about whether or not that person's going to be in business in next month or 6 months from now. But if there's a predictability in it, you can, we live in a very codependent world, right? So many of the things that we do in our business effectively depend on having, for example, software we can count on, right? You know, I mean, the work we do at a law firm now, and when I think about how we did work whenever I first got into law practice in another era when you were much younger, Katie Beth, um, it was entirely different. We have tools and technologies now that we didn't have before, and we have become really dependent on those, and we produce far, far better work today than we did way back in the old days, because we're not having to sit down with an ink pen, or I like to think like a quill pen and a legal pad, and write stuff out, right? We were able to go into a software platform that has help screens and it tells us about a new case that we might not have known about, right? But those technologies exist because somebody created a business that we subscribe to. And so I know that next month, those people who run that business will keep adding content to the platform and adding value to our business relationship. So it's a win for them as a business, but it's a win for me because now I have the confidence that they're going to be there for me next month and next year and 10 years from now. So predictability of revenue, Luis is exactly right about that.
Yeah, agreed. I agree. In our interview with Tom Zeeb, and for those of you who may have missed that interview, Tom was actually in an accident that almost cost him his life, and it kind of made him reevaluate the way that he was living. And so his wisdom is that you need to ask yourself, are you happy? Or are you doing something that makes you miserable? After Tom's accident, he switched career paths completely and lives his life in a completely different way. And so his question is, does the misery in your life outweigh the fear of doing something new? You have to reach the point where you recognize that you have to jump in and make a change. Tom's argument is that failure is nothing compared to the feeling of sitting on the sidelines of your own life. Powerful stuff, very powerful stuff. And I feel like for our listeners who, are in all different industries and possibly business owners and those types of things, you do have to stop and reevaluate your life every once in a while and say, hey, am I serving the purpose I was created for? Even on the hard days, is what I'm doing something that I'm passionate about? Do I feel like I'm making a difference in the world? Or do I need to make a change? And so if you didn't listen to that podcast with Tom Zeeb, you can go back and check that out. Do you have any thoughts to add on that, Stan?
Oh, well, no, except to just say that, there are times that, the idea of sitting on the sidelines for a month to rest up does have some appeal to me. But, but I know in my heart of hearts that, that after a long weekend or a vacation, I want to be in the game, right? Because otherwise, I'm not living out a purpose. I'm just treading water. I'm marking time until I get to, like the end. And life doesn't work that way. We cannot live happy, successful, productive lives unless we have a purpose that is bigger than us.
Agreed. In that episode, we also talked about some friends of yours. I think he's a client who the goal was always for him to get to retirement so he could enjoy his life and play golf. And after playing so much golf, he was horribly unhappy. And their family ended up jumping into volunteering for all of these different things. And it was hard for you to even schedule meetings with them because they were volunteering for all of these different organizations and all of the things, which just really points back to the idea that it's not about money, it is about our purpose in life. Even when he was financially well set and thought he was living the dream he'd worked for his entire life, what he actually found was the importance of having a purpose and serving others. So I love that you told that story in the podcast as well. All right, in our interview with Diane Kokoza, she said, be mindful about who you interact with and who you spend your time with, because the people you interact with become a part of who you are. What do you think about that?
Somebody pretty famous, whose name I don't recall, said, you're really the sum of the five people that you spend the most time with. And I think that's true. And what that really requires us to do is to be really conscious of who that is, and to be constantly thinking about how to up our game in terms of who we spend time with, right? Really, really working to find people that are doing amazing things, doing successful things, and finding ways to be able to have the opportunity to spend time with them. And when we do, that rubs off. It absolutely, whether you like it or not, it rubs both ways, right? If you spend time with people that have an anti-success attitude, who are constantly negative, it's a struggle. You have to fight that, and that becomes a weight that you have to overcome. But if you spend quality time with people that are out there always thinking about how to make the world a better place, always engaging intellectually, creatively, uh, they will energize you. They will lift you up, and it makes life easier and more fun.
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of in the middle of the road. I'm not quite 40 yet, but almost there. And so there's this aspect of my life when I reread this quote from Diana that kind of made me think about the mentors that I have in my life and the influence they have on my life. And then in the same vein, it also made me really think about, especially when you said the five people that you're with, or that's the sum of who you are. For me, that makes me think, okay, well, for my children, I am one of the main people in their lives. My spouse is one of the main people in their lives. And so it makes me want to make sure that I am being my best self as well, and constantly learning and constantly doing my best because I have such a sphere of influence in their lives. I'm constantly being mentored by others, but I'm also in a phase of my life where I am teaching and mentoring young children as well. And so it really, I'm sort of at a middle ground right there where I'm in both phases.
So, so to follow on your point, let me say, we can spending time with people can happen in a number of ways, right? Obviously, one way we do that is actually physically spending time with people, being present with them. But you can also spend time with people by reading the books they wrote, or listening to the audiobooks they wrote, or listening to their podcast, for example, because these may be people that you don't personally know, and you may never meet them personally, but you can really get inside their life. You can get inside their head because they've taken the time to write a book or create some kind of content like that that they're sharing with you. And so doing that deliberately is not as it's not as great as actually hanging out with them and spending that kind of quality time, but it's it's a great way to do it because you can really identify the areas of your life you would enhance and find people who've written books or other kinds of media that you can really consume and do it that way.
Right. And like you mentioned earlier, with the technology that we have, this is the type of thing for our listeners. If there's something, one of these topics, or if you want to know more about the industry that you're in, or whatever it may be, spiritual growth, it takes 2 seconds to get on Amazon and download a digital book or order one. Or, in our library, we can get online and download books from the library for free. So you're right. There are TED Talks out there. There's so much technology and so many platforms. Podcasts. Hello, that's where we all are right now. There are so many podcasts out there that provide so much wisdom, and it is at our fingertips. We just have to, we tend to drift in life. And so we really have to be very intentional about making sure that we are spending our time, whether it's through a book or a podcast or in person, with people who make us better. Another quote from Diana that I loved was, "You can get along with people who don't have the same beliefs as you do, but it's difficult to get along with people who don't have the same values as you." I thought that was a really powerful differentiation. So, for instance, one of my best friends is Jewish, whereas I'm a devout Christian. And so there are obviously some things in there that we don't see, that our beliefs aren't necessarily the same. And yet, what we have found through our years of friendship is that our values about giving, our values about generosity, our values about serving others, about our values about loving others, all of those values are very much the same. And for both of us, come from a very strong faith that we have. And so I loved when Diana said that quote, that you can get along with people who don't have the same beliefs as you do, but not with people who don't have the same values as you. I think that's such a powerful differentiation. And I want to focus on the idea that you can get along with people who don't have the same beliefs as you. In this world that I feel like it's divided more than ever, um, knowing and acknowledging that it's okay and that you can get along with people that don't believe the exact same things as you. We need more of that in our lives. What do you think, Stan?
This point is so relevant today. This point is more relevant, I would say, today than it's ever been. And this has been new learning for me. In most of my adult life, I've had, I would say, fairly well developed political points of view. My son on a couple of occasions called me aside and said, Dad, you're a little bit hard over about this. But I think about this stuff a lot. And so I have points of view that really matter to me. And the challenge for me has been when I have clients or business relationships with people whose political views are completely at odds with my view. I've had to think about, it's really been a struggle for me to think about how is it that I can interact with and have successful relationships with these people whenever they see the world through such a different political prism. And I'm thinking about one client in particular now whose political views are just like extremely opposite of mine. But we got involved in a project, and I realized that their commitment to this charitable project was there was so much passion in it. I realized that my initial bias about who they were and what they would be like, filtered through my political prism, was fundamentally wrong. And it turned out that after I was able to peel that back and see what was really going on, how they were spending their time, how they were spending their money, their commitment to making a difference in their community, it turned out that our values were, they were an inspiration to me with their values. Their politics, not so much, right? But, and I feel like there's a lesson in this because whenever I look at the political environment today, just the toxic partisanship is so egregious. I just feel like if these people who say these things about each other, you watch whatever news channel you watch, you hear these people saying these things, these sound bites, talking about you know, whichever side of the spectrum they're on. I just have this feeling that if these people would just lay down their guns and get in a room together and actually have a conversation around a question of what is it that we share in common? What values do we have in common? And find some examples where that's lived out. That what we would discover is that there's much more common ground between people of wildly different perspectives than they think. And so I think if we could, I would like to hope that we can, Katie, Beth, you and I can grow a listening audience large enough that we can actually communicate this idea that if we can get people who think they're wildly different to actually really open up about what matters to them, that we'll find common ground and we'll hopefully begin to move the needle to a place where this environment is not so hostile, so toxic. I've never in my adult life seen it like this, and it's really disturbing. And it seems to me to be so unnecessary because I just know that these people really knew each other better. They had found a lot to like in each other.
That is the perfect segue into our next quote, which is from Zale Dowlin. And he said, whatever issue you're dealing with, the more you learn about them and their backstory, the more empathy you have. Even if you don't agree with them, when you understand where they're coming from, it removes that sense of frustration. And he is an estate planning attorney. He goes to court, he's done lots of different things. And he said the only client he's ever disappointed was a divorce case, a client that came and wanted him to just nail their ex to the wall. And he didn't. And he said, in whatever type of law we are practicing, our goal is always to get people to a place of peace. So I feel like that goes right along in the same vein, especially the part about, even if you disagree, the more you learn about their backstory, the more empathy you have, the more you realize that the less we know, the more hostile we assume the intentions are. Whereas the more we get to know people, the more we realize they're multifaceted as well. And they're not just that mean person, trying to make our client's life miserable. So I love that idea that building that empathy is really one of the keys, and that one of the things we're all called to do, no matter what your industry is or within your own family life and your own relationships, one of the goals is to always be a peacemaker and get everybody to that place of peace. Love that. Okay, moving on because we have a couple more quotes I want to get to, and we're almost out of time. So we had Debbie Ronka on the show, and she talked about the importance of mindset and the importance of getting rid of limiting beliefs. And of course, Debbie's focus is on the power that words have in our lives. So her argument was that we need to focus on positive words, and we need to be very intentional about the words that we speak over others' lives, whether that's our clients or our own children, whoever it is. We need to be very intentional about making sure that we are taking time to say those really positive things. I love you. I'm proud of you. You've done a great job. We think those things, especially as parents and grandparents, but we don't always say those. And her argument is, in the world that we live in now, your children and grandchildren and your clients are all going to get limiting beliefs because they're going to hear something from someone that's negative, and that's what tends to stick with them. And so be very intentional about using our positive words to help the people in our lives overcome limiting beliefs. What are your thoughts on that?
Debbie is such an inspiration. I I've worked since I've gotten to know her, since I read her book, and she's done some events for us here, as you know. She's really inspired me, and she's inspired me in a very specific way to recognize that when you have feelings about people, especially really, I'm saying really positive feelings about people, there's really no case for not telling them. There's no case for not telling them often and directly. I've really come around to this idea that, if you love somebody, tell them often. If you admire them and respect them whenever they do cool things, tell them and tell them often. There's just no downside to that. There's so many times during the day, during our week, a work week, for example, that we need encouragement. And if we have people that are around us and love us, who may have really good thoughts about us, but if they don't share it, telepathy, at least for me, doesn't work that well. You know, I
Right.
just, I just, I've had to explain to my wife, that my mind reading skills, I just didn't do that well in that class. And so just saying it in simple declarative sentences without equivocation, I love you. I love you like you are. I am so proud to have you, my son. I'm finding that, I love saying it. And I think, my wife loves hearing it from me. My son loves hearing it from me. I can tell you for sure, I love hearing it from them. And
Right.
there's no downside, and it does cost extra.
Yes, that is so true. Okay, we're skipping. I have more quotes, but we're running out of time. So I'm skipping down. I have our last two. So one is from Taylor Kovar, and it touches a little bit on some things we've already talked about. But in his interview, Taylor talked to us about how one of the great mistakes of his life was in losing that idea of the importance of serving others. And he kind of lost his way and had other people that had to kind of come help him stop focusing just on the business and get back to that servant leadership mindset. And so he said the importance of living your life uh, the importance of living your life is focusing on helping others. Losing that focus leads to losing traction and often losing your success. Surround yourself with trusted people who can help keep you on track. What are your thoughts on that?
I couldn't distill it better. I think
Mm.
that's the key to the universe, really.
Yeah, we've talked before on a lot of different podcasts and then in person as well about that idea of loving and serving others, and how making that the priority really oftentimes allows that success to kind of follow. Those things go hand in hand. When we're focused on business and we're focused on money and we're focused on success, we tend to lose our way. And that's certainly what Taylor talked about. But I love that he kind of brought in that concept as well of making sure that you have some guardrails in your life. You have some people, some bumpers who are there, who are trusted, who you trust. I know for you, obviously, Patrice is a person who, if she says, "Hey, Stan, I think you're off track," she's someone you're going to listen to. And Blake is that way for me. There are a couple of friends in my life who I very much trust and would be people that if they said, "Hey, these are some things I'm seeing. These are some things that concern me about kind of the direction you're taking things. Let's have a conversation about that." There are those people that I know that I have in my life that, number one, feel like they can do that for me without compromising our friendship. And number two, that would be people that I know well enough to know it's coming from a place of love and not a place of being a competitor or a place of jealousy. And so I love the idea of focusing on being a servant and serving and loving others, and then also making sure we have people. We don't always see ourselves clearly. And so making sure we have some trusted friends or spouse or someone in your life that can help you really look at who you are and keep you on track. Okay, last quote, and this one's mine. This one's very relevant for us as we get ready to close out the show. So the quote for you is, "Take a look around you and appreciate it. In a year, nothing will be the same." I think that is so true. When we look at, business-wise, where we were a year ago, and in our personal lives, where we were a year ago, it really, when I read this quote, it really made me kind of think through the last several years of my life and how we've not had a single year, I would say in the last 7 or 8 years, where we've not had some sort of a very drastic change, whether it was a career change or an illness or a marriage or having a new child or adding 3 new children or, our moving churches and all of these different things. We've not had a single year where from one point to any point in the next year, we could look around and very little has changed. So I love the idea of this quote that starts with, "Take a look around you and just appreciate it." We have so much to be thankful for with the law firm, with Legacy Leaders Network and all of our wonderful members that are in that, with this podcast and the incredible people that we got to meet through this that we'd have ever otherwise never run into or seen on LinkedIn or even met on Facebook. There is so much that I feel like you and I both have to really stop and appreciate.
And the thing that we're most grateful for more than anything else are these people. It's not the stuff, not the things, right? It's the people that are in our lives, and the opportunity to connect with great people, to learn from them, to be inspired by them is 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 a blessing. I'm excited. I mean, I'm certainly excited about the relationships that we've developed over the last 100 episodes of this podcast we've done. Excited about the people that we haven't met yet that we're going to meet in the coming year as we do this. This has turned out to be a lot more enjoyable, a lot more rewarding than even I expected it would be, and so pretty excited about it.
I agree. Well, thank you for tuning in to the 100th episode of the Legacy Leaders podcast. We're so excited that you joined us today. We are so excited to have been able to make that connection with you. As always, we're your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand, and we will catch you next time on the Legacy Leaders podcast.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.